In this video, I have 15 tips that are gonna help you get the most out of MyFitnessPal. These tips are gonna help you to be as accurate as possible so that you get the best results possible, and they're also gonna help you to track as quickly as possible to increase the likelihood that you'll actually stick to tracking your nutrition. The tips are gonna be divided into two categories. First, we're gonna talk about the accuracy tips. I have 11 of those for you, and then we're gonna talk about the time-saving tips after that, and I have 4 of those for you. But before we get into the video, hi, my name is Ryan Treadaway, founder of TreadawayTraining.com, where we help busy professionals get more results in less time through online training. If you want more information on body transforming training and nutrition topics every Saturday, consider subscribing. Now it's time for the accuracy tips. Number 1, if you eat it, log it. Just because you didn't log it doesn't mean that that food doesn't have calories, and just because at the end of the day MyFitnessPal says you ate 1,400 calories, that doesn't mean that you ate 1,400 calories. Sometimes people don't log those foods on purpose. I've had clients say to me, I knew it was gonna be bad, I knew I went over, and I just didn't wanna see how bad it was. I just didn't wanna know how bad I failed that day. Or it could be more malicious than that. Sometimes people will eat something and purposely not log it because they knew that it was gonna put them over, and then they wanted to pretend like they were still hitting their targets. And in either of those scenarios, you're only hurting yourself. You need to just go ahead and log it. If you have a good coach, they're not gonna yell at you. They're not gonna belittle you if you miss your target. If you have a good coach, they're gonna wanna help you. They're gonna wanna help you avoid that in the future. They're gonna wanna give you strategies to help keep you on track if you find yourself in that scenario in the future. So if they don't know that you're off track, then they don't know how to help you. They can't help you because they think that you're still on track. And then more often than not, it's just on accident. You go in the kitchen, you grab a bite of something, and then you go back to work, you go, do some chores or whatever else, and then you just forget to log it. And that's where the next tip comes into play. Number 2, log your foods either as you eat them or before you eat them, because if you wait till the end of the day and try to just remember all the things that you've eaten in a day, there's a good chance that you're gonna forget something here or there, and forgetting those couple of food items throughout the week, that's gonna lead to a lot of extra calories that you're not accounting for. And if your goal is weight loss, that could completely wipe out your fat loss progress just because you think you're eating less food than you actually are. Now, best case scenario, you'll log these foods beforehand, and the reason why I recommend doing that is because if you've already entered in MyFitnessPal, hey, I ate this much of this food, it makes it a little bit easier to kind of stop yourself, because if you had to go back in and log that you ate more, it's just a little bit of hassle that you might not want to go through, and it might be just that little bit of a nudge that you need to kind of keep you from overeating during one of your meals. Number 3, if you're out with your friends or you're at a party and you don't want to be that weird person that's at the social gathering just typing away on your phone, logging your meal, or you're afraid that somebody might make fun of you or something, then just take a quick note on your phone of what you're eating. Don't take time to search it and log it. Just jot down a quick note or take a picture of it, even better. That'd be even faster. And then just when you go home or maybe the next morning, you can go back and log that meal. So that way you have the meal logged, but you don't have to be that weird person that's sitting there on your phone the whole time. Number 4, measure, don't estimate. It's about a tablespoon, right? As it turns out, pretty much everybody is bad at tracking unless you have extensive experience with measuring out food beforehand to kind of base your estimations on. In fact, one study found that on average, Americans underestimate their calorie intake for a week period by up to 67%. Just let that sink in for a minute. Number 5, if you have to estimate, overestimate. If you're at that party like we mentioned a minute ago, or you're at a restaurant that doesn't have the nutrition information available or something like that, and you're having to use a generic entry on MyFitnessPal, go ahead and add a little bit of a buffer to ensure that you're not overeating. So just go in and add, a 0.2 serving buffer. So say you had 1.2 servings instead of 1 serving. That way you'll have that 20% buffer that if the entry is a little bit wrong, it's a little bit less calories than what was actually in the dish, you're covered by having that little bit of buffer, and your fat loss progress isn't gonna be hampered because of it. Now, if your goal is to gain weight and you're the type of person who tends to undereat, you would wanna do the exact opposite. You would want to underestimate what you ate. So if you think you had, one serving of this generic entry, then you would say 0.8 servings, so that way it would say you had fewer calories than you really did, and then you would know you would need to eat that many more calories in order to hit your target for the day. Number 6, look for the green check marks. The green check marks means that MyFitnessPal believes an entry to be correct, and there's a lot greater likelihood of those entries being correct versus the ones that don't have a check mark. Now, it's not always right, but more often than not, it is right if it has a green check mark. So if you're looking for 2 different entries and you're not sure which one's right, go ahead and go with the one with the check mark, or if you just don't have any clue at all, just automatically look for the one that has that check mark and you'll be right more often than not. Number 7, use weight measurements. You're gonna wanna get a food scale. You can get a cheap $10 one like this one. I think it was 10 bucks anyway. I bought it like 5 years ago and it's still kicking. And then you could also get one that's a little bit fancier, like this one that eTech City sent me for a review a while back, which I'll throw up in the cards. This one is $30 the last time I checked, and it can do some fancy stuff. It can track water, liquid measurement, stuff like that. You can do that on here, but one, a cheap one like this will do the job just fine. And the reason why you're gonna wanna use a weight scale is because it's a lot more accurate to weigh your food versus measuring it in measuring cups. And on top of that, it's a lot faster as well. So there's really no reason to use measuring cups to start with for solid foods. Number 8, simply use your judgment. Once you get used to tracking foods for a while, you'll kind of have an idea of what certain foods should have in them. So if you come across an entry that's just wildly off, then you know just to ignore that one and go to the next entry. For example, if you find an entry for chicken that says it has no protein in it and has 50 carbs, then you know that entry could not possibly be right, and you know just to go on to the next one. Number 9, count oils and seasonings. Oil is the most calorie dense food that you can have in your diet. And if you're not tracking the oil that you're using to cook with, then you're actually missing a lot of calories that are in your diet, and it could completely wipe out all of your fat loss progress, or could even cause you to gain weight, even if your goal is to lose weight. So definitely make sure to track that oil. And personally, I would recommend you not use oil at all for your skillets and just use cooking spray instead and save those calories. But nevertheless, if you do use oil, make sure to track it. And the same thing with seasonings. Make sure to track your seasonings. Now, dry seasonings typically don't have enough calories that they're really gonna matter, but if you're using wet seasonings, those can have a lot of calories in them. So make sure that you're not having calories kind of slip through the cracks by forgetting to track those things like your oils and your seasonings. Number 10, don't add calories for activity. If you connect your Fitbit to MyFitnessPal, or if you're adding your workouts in on MyFitnessPal, it will automatically add calories back in on your day, and you don't want to do that. If you have a coach who has given you nutrition targets, or if you've used an online calculator like the one on my website, which I'll link down in the description below, that already accounts for your activity. So if you're then adding more calories back in because you've done activity, you're actually eating too many calories, and it's gonna mess up your progress. So don't add calories for activity. Number 11, add the ingredients for your recipe individually rather than just picking some pre-done recipe that you find in the search results, because the recipe that someone else used could be way, way different than what you use. And I've seen this be very wrong in both directions. So I've seen instances where a client of mine has picked a random entry and then it ended up having way fewer calories than what my client actually had. And so they weren't accounting for all those calories. And then I've seen instances where a client has picked an entry and it's had way more calories than the client actually had at that meal. So just make sure to include all the ingredients individually rather than picking some random entry. And this kind of leads into time-saving tip number 1. If there's a meal that you eat often, you can actually save it as a recipe in MyFitnessPal. MyFitnessPal has a very robust recipe function. I made a dedicated video on that, which you can see up in the cards and down in the description. But the basic summary of it is you can save all the ingredients in a recipe, and then all you'll have to do is put that one entry in your food diary from then on, rather than having to log the several ingredients that go into that recipe individually, saving you a ton of time. I would definitely recommend you check that video out. It's gonna save you a ton of time going forward. Number 2, use the barcode scanning function. This will save you a ton of time. So if I were to go into my diary and I wanted to add this can of carrots, for example, I would have to hit add food. I would have to go up search bar. I'd have to type in great value sliced carrots, which would take 15 to 20 seconds. I'd have to find the right entry and select it. Whereas with the barcode function, all you have to do, hit the barcode and then hold it up to the camera, scan it, boom, done. Just like that. It's really that fast. Now, the one thing that I will warn you about here is that every once in a while, it is normally accurate, it's normally good to go, but every once in a while it might bring up something that's incorrect. So just give it a quick glance, make sure that what shows up is actually the food that you're eating. Put in the serving size that you actually had, hit the check mark, and you're good to go. Number 3, copy and paste meals from day to day. If you're the type of person who meal preps for several days in advance and you just eat that same thing, you bring the same meal with you to lunch for several days in a row or something like that, go ahead and copy and paste that meal, and don't take time to have to re-enter that meal every time. So if you go over to yesterday, so let's say you had soup and cheese and crackers, and you want to copy that over to the next day, all you have to do is hit the little 3 button in the little corner below that meal. You can hit copy meal, and then you can copy it to 2 days ago, yesterday, today, tomorrow, and then 2 days from now. So let's say we're going to copy it to today, and then let's say that we want to copy it from today, we want to copy it to tomorrow, and then we also want to copy it to the next day. Boom. Now it's on 4 days, and that took me literally less than 10 seconds. It's that fast. And then the last time-saving tip, the last tip of the day, number 4, don't track insignificant food items. If you drink your coffee black, don't worry about tracking it. If you have some dry seasoning that doesn't really have any calories in it, don't worry about tracking it. Don't track your vitamins, stuff like that. Don't worry about taking time to open up your phone, open up the app, find whatever the thing is, add it in there. Just don't worry about it. The harder you make it on yourself, the less likely you are to continue this habit in the future. We want to make this as easy and quick as possible to ensure that you actually stick with this new habit. Now, I definitely recommend you check out the video that I did on the MyFitnessPal recipe function. Even if you've already used this function before, I actually include some tips in that video to make it faster and to make it a little bit more helpful for you. So again, even if you've already watched it, go ahead and watch that video. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you hate it, give it a thumbs down. If you want more content just like this, consider subscribing, or you can check out one of the videos that will be up on the screen. You can also check us out on the Treadaway Training Blogcast. We're there every Sunday at 3 p.m. That's treadawaytraining.com/blog. As always, God bless you and your family, and we'll see you tomorrow. This will save you a ton of time if you're the type of person where you go ahead and do a meal prep and you cook for several... Goodness gracious.